Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to our panel, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So I'm Elizabeth Sills, Grants and Programs Manager at PRS Foundation, and I will be chairing the panel today. As we know, 2020 has been a challenging year for music creators and the talent development organisations which support them. COVID-19 has had a severe impact upon the live sector, halted talent development initiatives, and left many wondering when things will return to normal. But there are lots of positive stories out there, and that's what we're here to discuss today. TDPs have been changing their strategies and innovating to continue to support music creators and provide some inspiring stories and strategies to kickstart 2021. So I'm really grateful to be joined by Deborah King from Brighter Sound, Joolia from Audioactive, Emily Jones from Sage Gateshead, and Sarah Jones from Focus Wales. Hi everyone.
Hi.
How's it going?
How's it going? So to kind of kickstart the panel, would it be okay if we kind of go through everyone going through a kind of 30-second introduction each? I'll kind of come to you if that's okay. Deborah.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Deborah King. I'm the director of Brighter Sound, and Brighter Sound's a sort of creative music charity. We're based in Manchester, and we work with young and emerging music creators and industry professionals and leaders. We deliver a programme of grassroots music making opportunities for children and young people, and we also work with emerging music creators to help them support and develop their artistic and career potential, both in the North and in the UK and internationally. And we have a particular focus on connecting and collaborating with those underrepresented across the music landscape, for example, through our gender equality programme, Both Sides Now, across the north of England, and our new programme of leadership development. We, as well as developing commissions, we also deliver commissions and live events, and we're also currently the sector lead for Manchester Music City, with its recent formal adoption of a profile as an international music city and its membership of the International Music Cities Network.
Lizzie, you're frozen.
Oh yeah, I can see you're frozen.
Oh, she was very still.
Yeah, me too. I wonder whether we should we carry on introducing ourselves, or
Oh, she's gone.
Oh, she's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still there in the background?
Yeah, maybe you could carry on introducing yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Who's next?
She's gone. Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Emily Jones. I'm senior producer for artist development and projects at Sage Gateshead. Sage Gateshead is an international music centre in the northeast of England, and we have a vast programme of live music across contemporary and classical, and huge creative learning programme and outreach programme across the region. My role specifically is around the artist development programme, which includes residencies, commissions, talks programme, health and wellbeing support, and we have a particular focus on socioeconomic diversity and disability within that. So I spend a lot of time reading and talking about those things as well.
Shall I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me too. It's an honour to be here in such esteemed company. My name's Joolia. I'm the CEO at Audioactive, which is a music organisation based on the South Coast. Our offices are in Brighton and Hove, but we have projects right the way across mainly Sussex, East and West Sussex. We work with young people and emerging artists, not dissimilar to Brighter Sound. We're working with young people, very disadvantaged young people in some cases. In other projects, there's a real big mix of young people, but we have opportunities right the way from entry and intermediate level, skills drop-ins, music production, rap workshops, that kind of thing. In the middle, we've got more regular performance opportunities and programme there. We have a weekly young women's music production drop-in, looking at sort of challenging some of the gender inequality in the industry there from the bottom up. And then at the top end, sort of going into more professional artist development opportunities, we've got projects like Emerge, which is our 2 places a year professional artist development program. We also have a whole raft of other sort of more social innovation projects where we're using music to solve some difficult non-musical problems. So we have Room to Rant, which is a weekly rap and spoken word based mental health project. We're just about to launch Vocalize, which is a young women's version of that. The Room to Rant is for young men. And we do a lot of one-to-one work with quite vulnerable young people who are referred to us, who may be at risk of getting into criminality and youth violence. And what we do there is much more targeted work with them, but the idea there is that if they want to carry on making music at the end of that, then we help them to get into our talent development program. Yeah, we have had some interesting space-based projects going on at the moment, which would be nice to get into a bit later, I think. That's me.
Okay, everyone else has introduced themselves, so I'm just going to do mine now, just to fill you in. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the programme manager at Focus Wales. Focus Wales is a non-profit organisation, and we deliver an international showcase festival each year based in Wrexham in North East Wales. So that's the centre of our work, and we also do year-round talent development work with emerging musicians from Wales, including exporting Welsh artists to festivals around the world. And we deliver the official Wales at South by Southwest showcase. And this year we've also started doing a lot more online work, as a lot of people have. So we've been delivering some of that international work online.
Amazing. Well, welcome everyone. Sorry, I just got lost some internet connection situation. It wouldn't be a Zoom if it didn't happen to one of us. But thanks for bearing with me. And thanks for your introductions. It's really interesting to hear what's been going on. Speaking of kind of going ahead with this year, and I mean, sorry, 2020, we've passed that now, I know. Can anyone talk about any kind of hurdles that the organisation has faced, or how you've had to adapt your plans to do during COVID-19? I know a lot of you have done moved a lot of things digitally. Some things have become socially distanced, and I know Sarah, you've had to have a whole conference online. So is it okay if we talk about those kind of things that have happened?
Yeah, sure. So as Focus Wales is a festival, and we usually take place in May each year, we've had to postpone twice in the past year now, which was a challenge, but obviously we've done, I don't know, I feel like we've done really well to overcome it. So we're now scheduled for October this year, which hopefully will in some capacity be able to take place physically, fingers crossed. But yeah, as you said, we delivered an online conference this year across 5 days. So we had 5 days of online panels, which were free to attend. We also did 5 days of artist accelerator sessions, which were basically EPK reviews between artists and delegates, and speed sessions, like speed meetings online. Just trying to replicate some of the work that would have happened physically at Focus Wales, which worked really well. And actually, you know, we got a lot of the same outcomes for the artists and for the delegates as well. And as much as it being a good opportunity to learn and to share ideas, I think it is also just really good at that time for artists and delegates to be involved, like feel like things are still happening, because it's been quite isolating, hasn't it, the last year, everyone being at home and not having those opportunities to come together. So we've just been working hard to try and replicate that, and we're delivering another version of that in March actually, but it'll be a Canadian version. So we'll be working with our partners, our festival partners based in Canada, and connecting Canadian artists with UK delegates and Welsh artists with Canadian delegates to try and build some of those relationships ahead of hopefully being able to do those physical exchanges again this year or next year. I don't know.
It's all it's been a difficult time, but it all sounds really, really, really positive that you've been able to still do a lot of the work that you had planned, and it's really great to hear the kind of positive energy about still being music creators, still being able to work with each other and be involved. Deborah, how do you feel this year's gone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obviously a bit of a shock just to work immediately, but we managed it, and I've been amazed actually at how the sector has continued to deliver stuff and connect with artists and so on. But I think our initial response really was to provide immediate and emergency response to the young people and artists and emerging artists that we were working with, and then to kind of look at and to reassess the need and positioning of our program, which took a bit of time, and then basically to continue to support and develop emerging artists and their creativity, because obviously we wanted to ensure that there was greater inclusivity across the industry in the long term. So we wanted to continue that sustainability really. So immediately we delivered a digital program of 4 emergency support webinars, and that was targeting emerging artists and providing advice and guidance and signposting to important areas of organisation and self-support. And so that was like around emergency support and new funding, which was just about looking at, you know, different grants, different opportunities, different commissions that were there and out there at the time. And then a thing on replanning finances and budgeting and managing, you know, the kind of crises really. And that was really aimed at artists as well, to plan their personal or professional finances. And then a really interesting session actually about using intuition at uncertain times. And that was really about, you know, working with creatives who were kind of fearful or anxious or overwhelmed at the kind of extraordinary time that we were in. And then a final one was around communications and PR and media, you know, so it's kind of media, press releases, social media as an independent artist, and what you can do and how you can change your messages or develop your messages in the context of COVID. So that was really, all of those things I think were very well attended, and it felt like a good thing to do in that it offered that immediate support. We also did 2 live streams of our Both Sides Now programme, one with United We Streamed in Greater Manchester, and the other one through the takeover of Sound City's Liverpool Guest House, which was also went down well. And then we also carried out an artist consultation across our networks in May and June. And I guess that this process helped us to better understand the challenges that artists were facing. And then we kind of used that to reassess and refocus our programme. So there was some current themes that emerged from that, like, you know, a continuous struggle for artists to generate enough revenue for their music career to make it sustainable. Artists finding themselves lost and in need of support and direction, and needing support with self-management to navigate a career path, and that need to be multi-skilled, you know, the real desire to be multi-skilled in creating, producing, strategizing and promoting their own output and developing their career. And so we then focused on 4 main areas after that, relating to artists' mental health and well-being, and self-management support, multifaceted skills, and the development of networks of support as well. We also, because we're a sector lead of Manchester Music City as well, we built a sort of citywide steering group across the city, which was really to take the views forward of the music sector as it stood currently. And we just recently commissioned some research into the economic impact that music has in Manchester, and some action focused work and initiatives, I think, around the resetting and the rebalancing of the sector since COVID, especially in relation to the light that Black Lives Matter threw on structural inequalities in the sector. So that's been really interesting to move that work forward strategically citywide as well.
It's really amazing to hear. As you were talking, I was thinking, wow, there's a lot going on here. and it's amazing that there's inclusivity seems to be at the heart of it, and really great that you've been involving the city as well. Emily, you have kind of residencies as well involved with Stage Gateshead. How's everything gone for you?
Yeah, the timing of everything was interesting for us, I think, in terms of the lockdown in March, because we were in the middle of the open call for our biggest residency program when that happened, and so immediately had a sort of kind of do we continue with this, or what do we do? Do we let the open call run its course and then do the selection process and work out what we'll do later? It was a bit of an interesting situation. In the end, we decided to go ahead with the program and move it to an entirely online format, which, considering that it's a creative focused residency, was an interesting thing to try and work through. But we ended up with 25 artists across 2 weeks, all working remotely, either in their homes, or in some cases we hired rehearsal spaces where they needed them. And then all the kind of industry guest speakers and all those kind of sessions and listening sessions and stuff we would have done all happened online. And we used Microsoft Teams to create essentially like a community forum for the artists, which was actually really valuable and meant there was some kind of ongoing dialogue that wouldn't have happened when everyone was in their own little rehearsal rooms in the building. There might have been occasional chats over cups of tea, but that was about it. So it was really great to see that in action, see it working, and there were some kind of unexpected benefits of doing it all online. Like, we were able to record all the sessions, so we now have this huge resource of amazing talks on a wide range of topics that we can make available to people in the future. It meant the artists could watch them back as well if they'd missed anything. There were lots of kind of unexpected plus points from it, but there were some things that we couldn't replicate, like the change of scenery that you get from traveling to Gateshead and spending a week in a different building. We had some funny chats with some of the artists about things like, could you reorganize your workspace at home? People moving the furniture around to try and get a different perspective on their music was quite an interesting outcome. But yeah, we had some really positive feedback from the artists, and as you said at the beginning, people just really valuing coming together and having something to focus on and to work towards seemed to be the really key thing. And we also, it was the first time we'd already planned to offer bursaries for people who are kind of financially in need, and obviously by the time we got to August, the need was much greater than we'd ever expected. So it was also really good to be able to kind of expand that and offer it to as many people as possible, so that we weren't just kind of giving them something to work towards, we were also helping out a bit financially as well. So that was probably the biggest of last year's hurdles and changes of plan. But yeah, as various people have said, moving everything online has presented a whole bunch of challenges and opportunities, I think. We spent a lot of time talking about digital accessibility, because that's, accessibility is a big thing for us as an organisation. And I feel like I've learned so much about captioning in the last 6 months. Like, if anyone's got captioning questions about any format on any platform, that is now my forte. So it's been a big learning curve as well, definitely.
Amazing. Well, if any captioning questions, you know where to come to now for digital content. It's really lovely to hear the kind of positive outcomes of unexpected positivities of coming from working online and going digital, and some things that you've gained in terms of going through this platform. And how about you, Adam? Have you found things similar?
Yeah, I mean, God, what a roller coaster of a year, I can't speak for everyone else, but I don't have any qualms in saying that we sat down the first time after everyone started working from home, and I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. This had never happened before, right? It's kind of been probably the biggest thing to ever happen in the world in my lifetime. And it seemed like every week that we met up as a team, things had developed considerably. And it's kind of like, we were having these ideas last week, that's really not a great idea now. And that process carried on, to be honest, for a couple of months. And so I think that the first thing that I kind of learned was that actually sometimes it's okay to not do anything. See what emerges from that. But it really, just in terms of how it impacted us, all of the face-to-face work that we did with young people and emerging artists stopped overnight. And just to put that in context, we were probably having somewhere between 65 sessions a week of talent development sessions or mentoring sessions with young people and emerging artists. Gigs that we had lined up were cancelled, or conferences that we'd planned to sort of be part of were cancelled. We've got a team of about 30 artist practitioners who are all mostly professional musicians as well, who lost most of their work overnight and their gigs at the same time. So, you know, there was that to think about. Any trading income we had from renting out practice rooms and stuff, or studio rents, just again disappeared. And as a charity, 90% of our regular funders just disappeared in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. And to top all of that off, we've sort of been working for the last 3 years or so towards setting up a centre of excellence for our work for socially engaged talent development. And the company that we would have been subleasing from in that building also went under due to COVID. So we actually lost our premises, which, although we didn't have the premises, it wasn't ours, we hadn't signed a lease. It's taken us 3 years to get to the point where we had that. So it was quite a bombshell to start off with, and we were kind of like, okay, so what do we do now? And, you know, and I think the thing was, the difficult decision for us was which way to approach it, because we could either batten down the hatches and wait for the storm to pass and see what happened. You know, the furlough scheme was announced pretty quickly, or we could try and figure out a way through it. And I think that, you know, much like other people in the room, as a charity, I think our reason for being is very much about impact with our communities and with the young people we work with. And also our income and our funding and our revenue is all predicated on impact and being able to demonstrate that we're having an impact. So I think we're very lucky not to be in a position where, as a lot of the music industry, being reliant on audiences, paying audiences, to be able to carry on doing what they do. And I'm very thankful for that. So we really just put all of our energy, we didn't furlough anyone, we put all of our energy into just pivoting and seeing what we could take online. The funders were amazing, actually, across the board. You know, our regular funders are people like Arts Council, Youth Music, PRSF with the Talent Development Network. And all of a sudden, flexible funding was a new term, you know, that was being thrown around, and funders, the first priority that came out quite quickly and clearly was that we are interested in you guys still being here this time next year. Come and talk to us. And that was brilliant, because as well as being able to use what funding we had in the best way that was possible for this new landscape, we were also then able to look after our big workforce of musicians who had also had their lives decimated overnight as well, and quite quickly putting them back into work in things that we wouldn't normally be getting them to do, like some behind the scenes development, or just sort of no program developments and things like that. But some of the stuff we got transferred over to online. We started doing weekly drop-ins for music creation, mentoring. The mental health projects that we ran went quite nicely over to online. And the interesting thing there was that some of the participants who didn't really get that engaged face to face, all of a sudden came out of their shells, and especially once they turned their camera off. So different people reacted quite differently to the online context of what we do. We started publishing, was quite short-lived, but we published a few sort of online tips and tricks with artists who work for us. Listening parties. We tried to stream a couple of live gigs. The first one was very quiet and quite glitchy. The second one was quite glitchy, but had a really good audience. I think about 3,000 people watched that across our channels. But I think, yeah, it was really about just sort of not being afraid to try stuff out and to be okay with it not really working the first time, but just the important thing being that we were trying stuff, learning from it, trying again, and at the end of it all, being able to say to people like PRS or funders or commissioners, we're still going, we're still having an impact, and that sort of was one of our biggest survival techniques, I think. So yeah, you know, I think the other thing was that being able to sort of repurpose recovery money that we were able to access to help out musicians and practitioners, because although like with Sage saying that they had was it a grants program for like emergency support and things like that, we weren't able to do anything like that. But what we were able to do in some of the spaces that we run, we have for example in our space in Brighton, we have 7 professional artist spaces that have got artists who work for us in them as their own studios. And so when we got recovery funding, we were actually just able to give them complete rent waivers during lockdown, so they didn't have to pay a penny, and they could come out the other end of it with their livelihood, or at least the means to make their livelihood intact. And that, you know, that was really nice to be able to do. With regards to the Emerge Artist Development Programme, a lot of that could still carry on with the sort of the strategizing and career development, PR, legal, all of that side of it. Obviously, it was really the performance side of stuff that hasn't been able to do. So yeah, you know, as everyone else in the room, we managed to find a way through. And it's felt quite different going into this lockdown, but that's another story.
Yeah, it's really amazing to hear the adapting to change, and interesting that you kind of use the term impact and how important that was in your work, and the kind of similar to other organizations, the unexpected outcomes that you managed to get more people involved in a way by doing things online. So thinking about what we've all just talked about and the kind of positive things and the outcomes that we've had from this year, do you have any thoughts on what the future looks like for talent development organizations in general? Will there be a kind of new normal or an eventual return to business as usual? Will there be parts of what you've learned here that you will keep? And maybe what are you looking forward to getting back to? Deborah, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking actually about everything that Adam was saying as well, and you know, the kind of the fragility of the marketplace that COVID has almost shone a light on, really. And so I don't think we can return back to the new normal, because I think what it has revealed is, you know, that those precarious employment conditions for the artists that we work with, and I think that's really, really significant, especially for freelancers and independents. You know, and it was great, some of the things I've heard about being able to support those freelancers and independents, but the truth is that they weren't really supported, and you know, holistically over across the UK, they weren't really supported. And I think that aligns as well internationally, you know, that wasn't the priority for government support. So I guess it's looking at, I suppose, with that fragility, how, you know, as a talent development partners, we can sort of look at how those structures of employment can become more stable, you know, for independents and freelance musicians. And because, I mean, obviously what that does highlight is how risky working in the sector is. And I think that will, and you know, I know I've just read a report actually from the MU, which was said, you know, 1/3 of musicians are leaving the sector, 1/3 of the supply chain are looking at other career pathways. So I think one of the fundamental things that we can do as, you know, TDPs is to really look at that sort of clarity about what a career in the music sector can look like, especially for the young and emerging people coming through, you know, because currently it looks very unclear, it looks very hazy, it looks quite worrying, you know, and I think those things have kind of been highlighted. And I guess it's a challenge for us, but it's also a challenge for the future of the industry, you know, because I think it has the potential of stifling that emerging talent that we want to see, and that diversity of talent in the sector. So I think that, you know, the future has to kind of bear all of those elements in our sort of planning and strategy and our thinking.
Yeah, lots of positive change.
Yeah, positive change, yeah.
Definitely. Emily, how about you?
I was nodding a lot then. I've been thinking about that quite a lot too, and kind of what is the industry that we're developing this talent for? What is that going to look like? I've kind of become aware. I've been every month since April, actually, been running some sort of online one-to-one just advice sessions with artists, and I've kind of become aware, or certainly in the first few months of the pandemic, I became aware that everyone was kind of kidding themselves a little bit about obviously none of us knew how long this would go on for, but both in the conversations with the artists and even in conversations with agents and promoters and stuff, there's this kind of expectation that it'll just be like, we're back. And I think we all need to be honest with ourselves and each other. That's not necessarily the case. If, you know, on a very basic level, as Deborah said, if there are 30% fewer artists and potentially fewer promoters, fewer venues around, it's going to look quite different anyway. So I think there's something around being as clear and honest as we can in those conversations with each other and with artists about what that might look like, and also trying to make the industry better as we're doing it, both I think economically and environmentally as well. That's something I've become quite aware of. Been some really interesting conversations over the last year about more sustainable touring models and kind of only lead artists traveling and, you know, connecting with local artists or even local communities to deliver work rather than taking large groups of people halfway around the world and kind of, you know, hundreds of flights. So that's some quite interesting thoughts there, I think. I think obviously the digital element is here to stay. That's certainly how we're planning going forward, that we need to take forward all this learning and all the benefits of it. I don't think that will change drastically. I think also I would really like the emphasis on self-care to continue, even just on a personal level. I've stopped like jumping on trains and dashing all over the place, and obviously I miss seeing all those places and people, but I've also had a lot more time to look after myself and reap the rewards of that. So I really hope we can all take that forward as well. I think that would be a really great outcome for everyone to be in a much better place mentally and physically over the coming year.
Yeah, I think they're values that we all, and has come to light over this pandemic. I mean, I certainly, when I was packing my laptop up, didn't expect to still be here almost a year later. But it's really positive to hear the things that we've learned and what can be taken forward, and interesting that a digital model will stay as well. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Deborah and Emily have both said. And I think what the last year has taught us all as an industry, if we didn't already, it's all to be a bit more compassionate with each other, not just with musicians, but with all levels of the industry, all sectors of the industry, and just to, you know, it can be a harsh industry and it can be very competitive. But I think, like what Emily was saying, the element of self-care and like the real sort of push on awareness for mental health has really sort of aligned it with the pandemic in such a positive way, and I really hope that continues. I mean, even on a personal level, I have had the time this year to do a mental health first aid training course, and possibly a lot of other organisations have had the time and resources recently to do more things like that and feel more engaged with that way. And I definitely feel more able now to support, whether it's musicians or other industry, and just be more confident to talk to people about things like that. So I think that's a positive thing that's come from the last year. And yes, the outlook could be a bit bleak for a while, but I think we will, as long as we all keep looking after each other and working hard, we'll get back to normal eventually.
Yeah, there's this unanimous opinion of still being able to support musicians the way that we have been, in a way that fits better in the current climate. Adam, how about you? Yeah,
it's really interesting. I think, Deborah, as you were talking about actually the impact on just a really hard-hitting thing of there being possibly a third less technicians and roadies and everything else. You know, the thing that was going through my mind is the question of why it is that organisations like ourselves are able to engage with quite marginalised communities? What is it that authenticates it for them? Because, you know, we see a lot of young people who refuse to get involved in other services and support and professionals and that sort of, you know, and even youth centres and things like that. And some really talented young people who will never actually come into contact with any developmental people. And I think that part of the reason why they want to get involved in projects like ours is because they can see that at the other end of what we do is a really amazing scene and infrastructure that, you know, if it doesn't exist, or if it's no longer a viable kind of career, then I think the question in my head is, does that then sort of compromise our ability to reach those communities because we can't authenticate it with that at the other end of it? There's something to think about that. But, you know, with regards to your question, Elizabeth, about what the future looks like for talent development organisations, I mean, I'm mixed, but I have a lot of positives. So I'm quite optimistic about some of them because I think the landscape has changed a lot, you know, and I hate to sound like politicians of a certain persuasion, but I think that sorry, I'm trying to think of a word that wasn't swearing there, but the upheaval, let's say, of the last year, it's created some opportunities as well. And I think what I mean by that is that, you know, I was looking at the list of talent development partners across the country, and I think it's fair to say a lot of them are subsidised arts organisations. I'm assuming that people like Arts Council are regular funders in them. And when you look at what their priorities are going into the next 10 years, with things like place being such a big part of their agenda now, we're all trying to get our head around, well, what does that mean in terms of what we do as organisations? And I'll get to the point in a minute. I think that we've got a lot more leverage now with local authorities as key players in placemaking. When I used to go and speak to local authorities, you know, over the previous 10 years, we'd usually get, when they still existed, arts development officers and arts development managers in local authorities. And historically, their departments, the funding for those departments was pretty much their staff. They didn't have big budgets in order to make big things happen. But more often than not now, when I'm working with local authorities in towns that we're working in, we're in touch with the place team, the place and economy team. And the reason for that is because some of the things we're talking about doing, they're seeing as opportunities to revive the dead spaces and that are being left behind in the wake of the pandemic. Because let's face it, I don't think retail is going to suddenly return to these dead spaces. I think retail was on the way out anyway in its conventional sense. So I think if organisations like us can find creative proposals for those spaces, all of a sudden we're going to be in touch with people in local authorities with bigger budgets to make things like that happen. Or if not the cash, if they own that space, the subsidies and the peppercorn rents and stuff, which we can make sustainable business models out of. So that's kind of like where I'm thinking over the next few years. It's kind of how can we look at this new landscape and just align that with, you know, with the priorities of our own organisations and the people who support our work a bit more. And I see, you know, I see some exciting opportunities there, really.
Amazing. Interesting to think of that changing landscape and changing business models. It's all really positive, everything that we've all said. In terms of kind of moving ahead into 2021, where we are now, are you able to kind of speak about any specific strategies or plans that you might have that have brought forward that you've learned from 2020? Sarah, could I come to you first?
Yeah. Well, our plan at the moment is still with the hope that Focus Wales will be able to happen in October in some capacity. But I think in the last year we've developed so many skills for online working and digital things, like Emily was saying. I've just never had that kind of digital skill set before, but now I have to have it, and we all do. And I think it's so valuable actually that it's really given us the opportunity to be completely flexible and agile in how we work, and to always have that as a fallback plan, or not even as a fallback plan in some cases, as a sort of, we've sort of proven that it can be so useful and provide really positive outcomes. So I think our plan is actually, as much as we want to get back to physical events and physical development work with artists, we know that it's going to be quite a slow process. So just using the skills that we've learned. And yeah, like Adam was saying, just the ability to be a bit more relaxed in our approaches to things, and knowing that it will just be okay because everyone is in the same boat. Everyone knows that everyone is trying their best to make something happen and make something work.
No, exactly. And I was just thinking about your earlier point as well, Adam, of trying new things out. Would it be okay for you to talk about anything that you've got ahead?
Yeah, and just to reiterate what you were saying, Sarah, I think that's really the biggest thing that I've learned and that I want to take forward is, you know, to carry on being experimental, just being unafraid to try stuff out and unafraid for it to fail, as long as you learn something from it, and that you've done it and everyone stayed safe, and you know, you've done it responsibly. But I suppose some examples there. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work on Zoom with young people, drop-ins, and you can have breakout rooms and all of that. But you know, I think one of the things that comes back a lot from the practitioners is that there's only really a limit to what we can achieve musically in terms of supporting a group of young people to create music in the same way that we were before. And we're quite interested in looking at other ways, you know, possibly building some digital spaces in accessible or open source platforms, because you could risk venturing into like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if everyone had a VR headset and was able to attend a virtual music production workshop? But then has everyone got VR headsets or the internet connections to deal with that kind of stuff? Started to venture into some ideas around XR as a platform, which is something like Mozilla Hubs, which is kind of like, you can do it in VR if you've got the kit, or you can do it on your desktop if you haven't. And it's a bit glitchy, but we're going to start doing some experiments in the coming months about some of the ideas that, like I just said there, knowing that, to be honest with you, Mozilla Hubs isn't a capacity yet where that's going to happen seamlessly, but we do know that we're going to learn something for when the technology catches up and be ready to sort of jump on that when it does. I think we are, we're going to start, I mentioned earlier that we're looking to set up a centre of excellence, and we were all lined up to raise the money this year and do the build and the refit, not a new build, but the refit next year, with a view to open in 2022. And I think that, again, using that sort of more experimental angle now, we've kind of put that project off for 3 or 4 years. And what we're going to do instead is an experiment on the way to that project. So I spoke about the empty space thing. We're going to be taking on the old Dorothy Perkins store on Worthing High Street within the next couple of months. And not just have it as a space for young people, but bring in some other like-minded music businesses with similar aims, similar aspirations for the recovery of the music scene in Worthing, which is one of the towns that we work, and have lots of different things going on under one roof with a space for our projects within it, if you like. So yeah, we'll see how that goes as well. I think I had one other thing, but I couldn't remember what it was now. But yeah, I mean, a couple of things there in terms of what we're looking to do in the next. Oh yeah, we're going to launch a record label. You know, we've been talking a lot over the years. As you can imagine, the opportunity and the question has come up, should we be running a record label? We develop our own talent. We're aware of people that the A&Rs would be excited about probably 2 or 3 years before they know about them. We have a much more ethical perspective than the commercial, a lot of the commercial music industry. And the debate is raging now over the ownership of masters, and really that's what a record label is about, isn't it? So, you know, we've been consulting a lot with emerging artists about, you know, if they're sort of more of a DIY stance, why is that? What are the pros and cons of going DIY versus a label? What would a happy balance look like? And long story short, we've decided that now is the time to try and get a serious record label off the ground that's going to hopefully propel them into the commercial end of the music industry, but with much more of their rights and their interests at heart. So we'll see where that one goes as well.
Oh, well, watch this space. All sounds incredible. Yeah. Deborah, you've had to also kind of reposition a lot of your work. Are there things that you're going to bring forward into 2021?
Yeah, I think it's just some really interesting thing about the leverage as well that we're seeing that music has. And I was just thinking about people saying about their own mental health and well-being, and then I just was also, I think somebody in our team read this article in The Guardian this morning about the percentage of young people who are suffering from, you know, poor mental health and well-being and really struggling, and I just think there's something within music that can really offer something to young and emerging artists around that. And I think there's something, I think we're already working in that field, but I think we're looking to build our kind of work in that area as well. I just think it's something about music and the role it plays in everybody's life, and we all know about it, but I think that's also being profiled during the pandemic as well. You know, it's been part of our survival kit almost. So I'm just interested in that. Interestingly, we're also launching a record label as well. So we need to talk about that through our Both Sides of Now program, which is really exciting. And we're looking at digital options as well as obviously live options, and a kind of a mix of both. We've already started to do 2 international commissions digitally, which is just really interesting, looking at how that can happen. And we're also looking at how we can deliver our residencies as well from a sort of online as well as a sort of backup too. And everything that people have been saying about the learning in terms of, you know, perhaps broadening access in a different way through digital, and people coming and joining sessions that you wouldn't expect to come. But that whole thing about areas as well and locality, and how actually digital just crashes through all of that. Like, it doesn't matter where you are, you can still link in to the conversation. And I think that's really been interesting for us and something that we will really take forward. I guess the other bit that I was just thinking about as well was that whole thing about collective working. And although there are lots of independent sectors in the industry and they all have different needs, I think our experience of working with Manchester Music City and Both Sides Now, and probably our more broader Transforming Leadership programme, is that despite that difference, you know, there's also a high level of cohesion, and it's something about collectively dealing with these challenges, which I think is quite exciting, because of the crises, it's almost like people have been thrown together to try and work it out, and I think we could build on that. And I think that also links into, you know, that the resetting and balancing and the equalisation of the sector, and really working towards that as a company, which we're very committed to. So yeah, those are the main areas, I think.
Lots of shared aims and shared ambitions, and it's all really positive. Also the fact that we're spotlighting on the importance music has, and has become even more clear throughout this time. Emily, do you think you'll be bringing anything forward into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the digital thing that's already been mentioned a few times, the residency program that I spoke about at the beginning. What I'm planning for this year is actually a hybrid version, a sort of blended model, so that because obviously, I mean, I would hope by August it's going to be okay for people to travel and for artists to come together in rooms in a building, perhaps, you know, hundreds of miles from where they live, but there's no guarantee. So that's one thing I've learned from last year. So what I'm looking at the moment is a version where, for example, all the talks and discussions take place online. People can take part from home if they want to, or if they want to or need to travel to stage, they can come and use our rehearsal spaces. And that also gives us flexibility in terms of venue restrictions and things. We've also been doing, at the end of last year, a series of live stream performances from the largest venue at Sage, as well as having a socially distanced audience when we were allowed to. And I think that model is something we're definitely going to be continuing with, and probably, you know, even once we're up to stage 5 in the performing arts, wherever it is, it's not a tier system, is it? It's a timeline, whatever it is. Whenever we're allowed to have audiences in normally again, we probably will still continue with that streaming work. We've invested a huge amount of resource and time into developing something that's kind of TV quality or close to, and to be able to do that live rather than kind of edited. So that's something that we really want to take forward. I thought Deborah's point about the kind of localization thing was really interesting, and how digital cuts across that as well. I was just thinking as an example, one of our artists in residence this year has actually signed up to be part of Saffron's online sessions, and they're based in Bristol and she lives in Newcastle. That was not something that ever could have happened before. So there's been some really interesting things like that, which mean that I hope that digital cross-fertilization can keep happening as well. I think they're the key things, and that the organisation's going through a bit of a sort of change at the moment in terms of artist development actually becoming more central to the organisation's kind of core work. So I think there are going to be some changes in the way that we're working in relation to that, and how we're using our spaces as well, which is really exciting. I'm quite looking forward to getting stuck into doing actual things in actual rooms in a building with people. So that's going to be really interesting development too. I think oh yes, the other thing I was going to mention was just the that I've actually also planned to I've planned to not plan. So I've kind of kept part of my budget back for something responsive in the later part of this year for artists, because we wouldn't have predicted anything that's happened in the last 12 months, and who knows where we'll be in 8 months' time. So, and this idea partly was inspired by the series of events that Deborah did right early on in lockdown last year, that kind of immediate, fast, rapid response thing. It's like, when we get to September and it looks like things are opening up again, what are artists going to need then? So that's kind of another thing that's definitely being taken forward into 21.
Amazing. It's interesting to hear about that kind of flexibility of still being able to, if people can't travel, they can access things digitally, and also you are being so flexible in your work that you've got a backup plan for everything. And that, I think what you said about the planning ahead and planning to not be planned is a really good lesson for us all, that we've all learned over this year, because we really don't know what is lying ahead, which leads on to, I know we're running out of time, leads on to the kind of final thoughts that are, if you could kind of think about what's happened this year. We talked about, using digital a lot more, involving the communities, the impact it's had, and the overriding decision that we all want to support the musicians still. Is there something, how do you think music organisations and music creators in 2021 will need, what do you think they'll need to do in order to kind of sustain themselves? Just a kind of one sentence word of advice, if that would work. Adam, can I come to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be utopian about this, but I'm actually going to be quite boring about it. I think what's really helped us to survive is having our eggs in lots of different baskets. And, and I think what I mean by that is that our income and our funding comes from spanning not just music and arts development, but youth and community sector, skills and education, community safety. And if we didn't have roots in all of those sectors, then our income would have dried up if we were, just in one or two. And I think that I could probably translate that into an individual level. If you're a music creator or an artist, then my advice might be for at least the next year to think about that portfolio career that doesn't just look at just music. And I know that sort of limits creativity a bit, but I think that's where I'm going to stay on this one.
No, excellent advice, and thinking about that portfolio. And Emily, sorry, coming back to you, is there anything that you might give as a nugget of advice?
I think something that was actually said to me by a very wise person last year, and I think is invaluable advice to anyone in the current situation and in life generally, is to think about what you can control, especially in a situation where the world is so crazy at the moment. And that's certainly been really useful to me in planning or not planning, as I've just admitted, in kind of working out what to be sort of taking forward. I think it applies to artists as well. For example, one of the things that I had applied that to was that we're really struggling to find performance opportunities at the moment within the artist development program. It's really tricky, so I've kind of moved more towards R&D opportunities. That's something I have control over. I don't have control over when we're going to be able to do performances again. So I think it's quite general, but it's useful in most situations.
No, it's really about what you can control. It's excellent advice. Sarah, is there anything you might add?
Yeah, I suppose it sounds a bit, I don't know what the word is, brash, but like funders like PRS Foundation allowing us to have the flexibility with our funding has really just been such a relief and such a huge help this year, and being able to use that to demonstrate the value that the industry can still have during this time, and having these positive examples come out of that is going to be such a huge help going forward to prove to other funders and other sponsors that there is still value in the industry, and to keep supporting it, because it will come back if we keep doing that. And in the meantime, just using our time to, like Emily said, just being able to use the time to focus on things that we can control. So we've been sort of paying a lot more attention this year and doing a lot of work on diversity within our organisation, on things like mental health first aid training, all these things that in the past we did focus on, but we didn't have the time to fully commit to like a full project or programme. It's actually been useful to do that, having the time. So those two things, I suppose.
Amazing. Yeah, having the time to look at things with a different perspective has been a real positive time. How about you, Deborah? Do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, last things. I mean, I think I kind of agree with everything that's been said, actually, and that whole thing about plan to not plan. I think that's great, and also that flexibility and fleet of foot. And I think trying as an organisation to be a little bit ahead of the curve, you know, trying to keep abreast of all that sectorial, intelligent future thinking and all the rest of it, so that you can manage and you can help and support those independents and freelancers and musicians that you're kind of working with. I think that's going to be really key for us. And I think I mentioned before that collaboration and different elements of the sector communicating with each other. I think that's also something that I think we will need more and more of. And I suppose the other bit is, you know, those short, medium, long-term strategies and steps locally, you know, nationally and even internationally, as we go through this transition, is going to be really important. And I think, you know, you were just talking then about PRSF, and I think it's organisations like yourselves, but also, you know, policymakers actually trying to articulate that will help the cohesiveness of the sector as well. So that's something I think that organisations and music creators may need, just to understand how to transition almost from where we are now to where we want to be, because I think that's quite complicated and complex. Yeah, and I guess it's that whole thing about the fragility of the sector and supporting those better employment practices and maybe looking at how we can do that in the future as well.
Excellent. Well, it's been really, really, really positive to hear all these wonderful stories about how resilient your organisations are and how you've triumphed through this year and all the new work that you've been doing, getting involved with a lot of digital. And the overriding thing that I've seen is that it's been amazing to see that you're still able to support these music creators and so passionate about it, no matter what has happened. And so thank you for everything, and thank you so much for joining us on this panel. Does anyone have any kind of last thoughts that they'd like to share?
No, thanks for having us.
No, thank you so much for coming along. So I hope you have a great rest of the day and enjoyed the conference, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.